Okay, so welcome welcome back to the second semester of our SEGH seminar series. My name's Clay Prater and I'll be your host MC. So yeah, I'm oh, our president's joining. Or trying to. So sorry, people are trying to join like randomly. Hi. So I have someone else here. This is Ophelia. So you if you're on the bottom of the screen, you recognize her. Ophelia's here. So yeah,
All
so
right.
we're on the international board of SEGH. And we're sort of tasked right now with, just reaching out and developing connections in the Americas. So we have a pretty broad base of people. Right now, the leadership is based in Africa, and we have people in China. There's a big contingent at the British Geological Survey in the UK. That's where I sort of jumped into this. Oh, look, everybody's coming in now. Awesome. So yeah, I mean, the SEGH I've found is pretty wide open for anybody who wants to jump in and participate. So, as long as you study some kind of elements, which I do, and or link that to health in any kind of way, and that can be ecosystem health, human health, anything like that. We have a really diverse group of people, and it's really fun to, show up and chat ideas. So for this seminar series, so we started last semester and we had some really great talks. So we first of all we just gave a short introduction to the society, and we've had talks on let's see, we had a wastewater talk. We had a really great talk on basically incorporating diversity initiatives in urban areas. We've had a ton of really cool seminars, but the point of our series is to sort of, we're in the Americas, right? And we're over here on our side of the pond, and we're really looking to establish linkages, between North America, Central America, all the way down to South America. We're currently looking for other people to serve on the board if you're interested. But more than anything, we've just kind of set up these meetings as a chance to chat and get to know people and get to know different types of research, kind of showcase all the diverse research that we can do sort of under this umbrella. And I think one of the first speakers that I had in mind for this was my colleague Krista Capps, who I've worked with for quite a while now. And I know that she's been doing really amazing, wonderful work and down in Mexico and other places, I'm sure. And I reached out to her, asking if she would potentially be open to give a talk. And she said, yeah, let me chat with my super awesome collaborator, Mercedes, and we'll see if we can, get back to you and introduce you. So, so luckily they said yes, and we think that their talk is a really good introduction for sort of, how to build these really great sustainable interactions among people. And we're really excited to have them today. And I'll just apologize once more in front of everybody that this was supposed to be last week. I've been super busy and I goofed on the time. So they were really gracious in agreeing to push everything to this week. So yeah, I think I'll stop there and I'll let you all introduce yourselves as well. So yeah, take it away. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. So we're going to talk about creating and sustaining international collaborations to support tropical ecosystem science. Wait, I don't see the... Okay. So I am Mercedes Castillo. I am a research scientist at El Colegio de la Frontera Sur, ECOSUR, in southern Mexico. We are in Tabasco, in Villahermosa. And this is a public research center. And I am a biologist I got my degree from Universidad Simón Bolívar in Caracas, in Venezuela. And then I did my master's and PhD at the University of Michigan. And I have worked in rivers in the US, in Venezuela, and in Mexico. And my main interest is to understand how these systems work. I mean, how the fluvial ecosystem work and how natural and human factors influence their functioning. Particularly, I'm interested in studying the influence of land use change at the riparian and catchment scales on streams and rivers. I mean, on aquatic communities, on water chemistry, and ecosystem processes such as metabolism, river metabolism, nutrient dynamics, organic matter decomposition. I'm also interested in the study of the movement of nutrients, sediments, and organic carbon through river networks and the factors that influence this, like the interaction between rivers and floodplains, the hydrological seasonality, human factors like land use change, and also like dam construction. So those are my main interests. So Krista?
Hi, I'm Krista Capps, and unfortunately, I'm just getting over COVID, so I may start coughing again. But I'm also a freshwater ecologist. I have an undergraduate degree in biology and political science, a master's degree from Indiana University in environmental science, and then a PhD in ecology and evolutionary biology from Cornell University. And during my dissertation, I actually studied the organism that you can see on the top left-hand photo right there, which are armored catfish in Mexico, and at least in the south of Mexico, they're often called Castillo, but they're an invasive species from the aquarium trade. In Mexico, they're native to South America. After that, I did a postdoc in wetland science and sustainability science at the University of Maine. And so now I broadly work in freshwater systems, and a lot of my work focuses on urbanization and urban streams. And I think Mercedes next. So can you do the next slide? Sorry, Mercedes. Thank you. My original passion for wanting to do my PhD work was to work in systems like this. And if you are not familiar with this artist, his name is Ray Troll, and he loves painting fishes. And this is a picture of some of the fish diversity in the Rio Negro in Brazil. And I was particularly excited about working and understanding how animals were moving elements around ecosystems. So very complementary to what Mercedes was talking about. And in most cases, with most organisms, if you want to work with this level of diversity, you have to go to the tropics. And so from the get-go, from the beginning, I was very passionate about trying to conduct work in whatever I term as a sustainable way, and doing my best to continue work in tropical ecosystems. Can you go to the next slide, Mercedes? My work then really links community ecology with ecosystem ecology. So specifically how communities of organisms, and my dissertation work focused on fishes, my postdoc work focused on amphibians, and now I work on just a mess of things, but how communities of organisms are contributing to and influenced by different ecosystem processes. Can you go to the next slide, Mercedes? But I'm particular. Oh, does someone have a question? Okay. But I'm particularly interested in, and Mercedes alluded to this as well, as what is happening at larger spatial scales. So the catchment scale, and trying to understand how human activities broadly are influencing what's going on in rivers and stream networks. And Mercedes' work has really emphasized land use gradients. And I've even drilled down a little bit more into that to think about how water infrastructure, specifically wastewater infrastructure, might be influencing rivers and streams. But what I found is that to really get a good understanding of what's going on with these complex problems at very small to very large spatial scales, you have to have really big, wonderful teams of collaborators. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking today, the spirit of some of this collaboration. Next, Mercedes. And so in general, water management, as we all know, is a very challenging problem that the world is facing. And so I would argue that folks who are not working in collaborative teams and who are not conducting interdisciplinary work are really missing what the world needs to try to advance our understanding of freshwater science. Next, Mercedes. And so collaborations, as I've really understood them and how they've just really advanced my thinking, my research, my writing, is to couple my expertise with complementary expertise. You can just keep going through them, Mercedes. Complementary analytical capabilities, which can be really challenging to bring samples across borders. And so finding folks who have the ability, both the knowledge and technology to do an analysis, folks who can help build sustained connections with local counterparts. And this is especially true, for example, if you're working with freshwater fisheries in an area that freshwater fishing is really important. They can help support continuous access to sites, even though I need to be teaching in the US or in front of my computer. And what I would argue is that I think that sustainable international collaborations require local, very integrative and active collaborations because of permits and processing and the ethical considerations around that. Do you want to go to the next slide, Mercedes? And I would be remiss if, and I don't know how many, I'll just call us gringos are in the audience versus non-gringos, and you can define that however you want. But something that I've been thinking about from the beginning is this idea of colonial science. And I've tried to keep myself constantly thinking about this and how to combat this idea. And Mercedes, you can click next when you have a second. And this idea is kind of like parachute scientists or science, where folks from the global north or typically higher income economies arrive in lower income economies, conduct research, and leave. And in my mind, this completely misses the best resource, which is local expert knowledge, however you want to define that. But it's also, it's neglecting the acknowledgement of capacity development. And this is human capacity development. This is the ability to potentially ask different questions. This is the ability to ask continuous questions to support conservation efforts. And so I just want to openly state, this is something that I have no solution to, but I think about it often. And you can ask Mercedes, I annoy her talking about it. So, okay, next. Oh, Mercedes, was this me or you? I can't remember. It's me? You? Me? Okay. So, as we were preparing this talk, we actually started to analyze what our approach is, because the bottom line is that as I've moved from being a graduate student to now being an associate professor, the role that Mercedes has played in my life has transitioned from a trusted mentor to a friend to now what I would consider still a mentor, but a colleague and collaborator. And so full disclosure, Mercedes is one of my closest friends. So I also think that kind of influences what we do and how we do it. And I can't underscore how important my relationship with Mercedes has been to me as a human and a scientist. But anyway, so if we go back to the just science stuff, what we actually did was when I first got my job as an investigator, I said, okay, we should try to plan out what your goals are, what my goals are, what our visions are. And we actually sat together and thought about this. We tried to keep our interests under the same bubble. So we both definitely have different things we want to do. Mercedes thinks fish are fine, but she's not super passionate about them. I like microbes, but I like when she tells me what they're doing. So it works out really well. But we also tried to be really clear about what we can offer. I went and tried to figure out what the legal restrictions were with me, what I could actually do, and Mercedes did the same thing. We tried to set realistic goals. We tried to identify local expertise and build networks, both my network and her network. And we invested time to really understand what the realities of each other's requirements are. And then the last thing that I think was really important, and it ended up being after COVID happened, exceptionally important, was we tried to identify common research and funding that would allow us to dovetail or kind of integrate our research together so we could support each other with different types of funds for the same types of projects. So next, Mercedes, and I think this is my last slide. Oh, no, you.
So yeah, challenges are, I mean, to work in the tropics are multiple. I mean, I think one of the, I guess, the challenges for me and maybe for Krista is to find, I mean, collaborations that have similar interests but complementary skills. So sometimes you can find that you're lucky to find that in the same city, in the same research center, but sometimes not. So bringing, I mean, that could be, I mean, that's I guess one of the main challenges sometimes, to find people that is interested in tropical rivers, in tropical systems, but I mean, at the same time have some complementary knowledge, skills, experience. Field and laboratory method could be a challenge, I guess, for us that we are in the tropics, or for people that want to work in the tropics. Sometimes for us, like have access to basic data information, like this chart, although I think that here in Mexico, Conagua does a wonderful job, I mean, measuring this chart and collecting this information. Sometimes we work in streams, in rivers that are engaged. So we have to do some measurements or temperature or some cartographic information. We have to work on that. And also access to equipment. I mean, we have good labs here at Ecosur, but sometimes we're missing an equipment or we're missing an analysis that we cannot do that here. And I mean, it really helped to be able to send the samples elsewhere. And I think that for Krista is the same. I mean, sometimes, as she said before, I mean, she can have access in our institution, so we can process more samples or drive some samples and for future, I mean, for processing in the US. So that could be a challenge. I mean, sometimes to have access to some, I mean, field data or go to the field could be sometimes really challenging in this part of the world, but so far we have managed. And funding, sometimes funding, I mean, we have funding, sometimes we don't, sometimes we have limitations to use the funding. And I guess that's one of the challenges now to keep. I guess that's something that is valid for all scientists. I mean, the fluctuations in funding sources and funding availability. So I think that those are the main challenges. I mean, when we want to work in the tropics at large scales, we have to do a lot of field works. I mean, these are some of the challenges. And when we bring a collaborator, and in this case, an international collaborator, have a lot of benefits. I think one of the benefits is that this person helps to see the research question or the environmental problem from a different perspective, from another side, and also helps to put that research in context, in a broader context with a different approach, and that really enrich the development of the project or the research process. Also bringing, I mean, a collaborator usually this person bring new methods, or they know about other methods to conduct the studies, or have access to equipment. And these allow us to do like more, to apply multiple approaches, and that also enrich the research. It also helps to connect to other scientists, and this seminar is part of this network, that we are creating, and it really helps, involving people from other countries. And as I say before, bringing international collaborators brings some sort of resilience, into the fluctuations in funding and personnel. Sometimes we have the funding, like right now, but we maybe cannot find the right person. So sometimes Krista have a student or have somebody that can help with the data. Or on the other side, sometimes we have the person, but we cannot hire at that moment. And so that helps really to have simultaneous funding for a common goal or a common project. So Krista?
Okay. Yeah. So before Mercedes goes into an example of one of our collaborations that she's leading, we thought we would just talk about some practical advice for developing these relationships. So we have applied strategically for funds, and I'm going to talk a little bit about two strategies we used. One, you can apply for funds that are kind of outside of your own government, that tend to have a lot less strings, that tend to allow international work without similar oversight relative to federal funding agencies. And so one of the things that we applied for with our colleague, Allison Pease, who's a professor at the University of Missouri, and Allison actually led this, was a National Geographic grant to work within the broader Usumacinta River, which drains a large proportion of Guatemala, produces a large amount of Mexico's fresh surface water, and then drains into the Gulf of Mexico. And we were able to, even though the goals associated with that grant were very specific, what it funded us for was a huge field component. And so what we were able to do was really leverage those field research trips to bring as many people as possible to take advantage of that time. So one thing is apply for private funds and make sure to leverage every opportunity you have to get data. Bring as many people as you can. And then something else that required a bit more nuance and thinking was that within the same year, I received a grant which is awarded to early career faculty in the US called the NSF, National Science Foundation Career Grant. And Mercedes was awarded a national grant from CONACYT, which is the National Science Foundation in Mexico. And what we did was I had developed my career proposal, and Mercedes was interested in really similar questions. And so when we submitted these, they were very complementary to one another. I think I was listed as a collaborator on the CONACYT grant. The career grants do not allow anyone else to be a PI because it's awarded to an individual. But Mercedes and my other colleague, Manuel Mendoza Carranza, who's a fish expert, they both provided me letters of official collaboration on that grant. So they are associated with that project with the National Science Foundation grant. And because I was proposing collecting continuous data in Mexico, I was actually awarded funding to support a full-time field worker who is Mexican, which ended up being huge. And I think that is probably the best thing I have ever done to support our international collaboration. But that is in hindsight. So what I will say is in the future, Mercedes and I are already thinking about how to do similar things like this. And I'll leave it at that. Mercedes is going to talk about the project that she's leading through the CONACYT program, and I will turn it over to her. You're muted, Mercedes.
Okay. Now it's okay. Can you listen to me? Okay. So this is an example of these collaborations. This is an ongoing project on responses of ecosystem metabolism to land use changes and flow regulation in tropical lowland rivers. It's a collaboration between EcoSur, the University of Georgia, where Krista is, and Sam Houston State University. And it received funding from CONACYT and the National Science Foundation. And I also want to acknowledge the help of the boat drivers, the local guys, I mean, people who was watching the data loggers, and also our technicians that really helped to obtain these continuous measurements in the rivers. Metabolism is the balance between gross primary production and ecosystem respiration, and is considered an integrative measure of ecosystem function because it involves autotrophic and heterotrophic processes in different aquatic habitats. And despite there have been developments in data loggers and compute methods, long and continuous measurements are scarce for medium-sized rivers, particularly in the tropics. And these tropical lowland rivers have, some particular characteristics like high temperature, light incidence, a marked hydrological seasonality that influence water chemistry, the habitat, organic matter inputs, and all those factors can affect the seasonal patterns in GPP and ER. In addition, we need to understand better the responses of these tropical rivers to human threats, like rapid land use change and hydroelectric dam construction. Those can really affect the habitat, the hydrological regime, and water chemistry that in turn can affect the river metabolism. So considering that, we are evaluating the responses of the ecosystem metabolism to hydrological seasonality and anthropogenic pressures in rivers of the Grijalbo-Sumacinta system in southern Mexico. Our study rivers are medium-sized river. They are order 5 to 6, between 40 to 200 cubic meters per second. And they are well mixed vertically and transversely, and the study reach do not receive like tributaries or point source wastewater discharge. That is some of the requirements to apply these methods. So our approach was to estimate metabolism using the one station model in 3 rivers: a minimally disturbed river, a regulated river, and river under the influence of land use change. Our minimally disturbed rivers is the Sendales, which drains the Montes Azules Biosphere Reserve in the Lacandon Forest in Chiapas. And the Carrizal is our regulated river, and this is located here in Tabasco. And the study reach is located like 100 kilometers downstream from Peñitas Dam. And the La Sierra is the river that is impacted by land use change, such as cattle ranching, intensive banana and oil palm plantations, in addition to wastewater inputs. And this river shows like a very high concentration of suspended solids, as you can see in the picture. So what we did, this is an ongoing project. We're planning to finish likely this summer. So we started on May 21, 2021. So we are going to show you the results of the first year of data. We use concrete bases, like you can see in the left picture, to deploy the sensors. The dissolved oxygen and conductivity data loggers were suspended in the water inside a PVC pipe that was tied to the base and to a buoy. And the base was tied to a tree in the riverbank. We also placed a water level sensor near the bottom of the base. And we checked the sensors and downloaded the data every 1 to 4 weeks. And we also conducted monthly discharge and water chemistry measurements. To model the metabolism, we use stream metabolizer to estimate GPP, ER, and K600, which is the gas exchange constant. We estimate net ecosystem production by adding GPP and ER. ER is negative. We use the whole data set for the minimally disturbed river, but subset for the other sides because sometimes the loggers were buried or covered by mud. So there are some dates that we really cannot use the data. We use this chart from gauging station and field measurements. And we estimated depths from the Raymond equation, light from latitude from using the stream metabolizer. And we assessed the models we obtained based on the correlation between K600 and ER and the fit to the DO patterns. And in this picture, it's Dr. Ambel Ulser from Sam Houston University. And again, this is part of the networking. Chris is a friend of Krista, and she's an expert in metabolism modeling, so she brought all her knowledge and experience into the project. And here are the results for the Sendales. In the top panel, in blue is the GPP, the primary production, and in orange, the ecosystem respiration. And in the bottom panel is the discharge. So we can see that during periods of high flow, usually between June and November, December, we have low GPP, but high respiration. And then once the flow decreases, GPP increase and ER also decreases. And the net ecosystem production was positive during, once the flow decreases, NEP became positive for several days. And this likely is related to an increase, higher water transparency and increased light availability. For this river, we also find an interesting, relationship or a clear relationship between the salt oxygen and discharge. Higher discharge, lower oxygen, and the same for GPP. And this likely is related to the inputs of surface water and terrestrial organic matter rather than groundwater inputs, because conductivity also decreased with increasing discharge. And this is the Carrizal. The Carrizal is the regulated river. And in this river, in the bottom panel, you can see the discharge, and it's like it fluctuates. It fluctuates, but not that much because it's regulated. But also we see things like lower discharge during the norte season when discharge normally is high. So or higher discharge during dry season. So we have like really alternate patterns. So what we found here was that during high discharge, we have high GPP and high respiration. And during periods of low discharge, we have that GPP and respiration decreases. And it was like against what we expected. We expected like higher GPP during periods of low discharge. So maybe what is happening, during this period of low discharge, temperature was lower. Even here in the tropics and in Tabasco, temperature dropped from 35 degrees Celsius to 20. And that for us is already cold. So maybe that's a factor. Also, the river channel was very shallow and the water was had high turbidity. So maybe that was influencing this low GPP. And for this river, we didn't see, this clear relation between dissolved oxygen and discharge. And this is De La Sierra. De La Sierra is the river under intensive land use change. And gross primary production in the top panel was very low, was the lowest among the three rivers. And net ecosystem production was positive only for a few days, especially at the beginning of early in the rainy season and during the dry season. And this is a comparison of the three rivers. Here is the Sendales. And then this is the regulated Carrizal. We see that the GPP is higher and also the respiration. And then this is in black is the De la Sierra, which also have higher respiration but low GPP. And maybe that low GPP is related to the high concentration of suspended solids. And in this figure, we have the balance between GPP and ER. And the gray line represent those dates where GPP equals ER. So dates above the gray line represent dates with autotrophy and below heterotrophy. So the Sendales show many days with autotrophy, especially during the dry season. And as you can see, the points, the blue points are, not as dispersed as the Carrizal and de la Sierra, which are our disturbed rivers. So higher dispersion is and lower days with autotrophy seems to be a feature for a characteristic for the Carrizal and de la Sierra. So our main findings are like this strong influence of hydrological seasonality on the Sendales, on the minimally disturbed river, and the autotrophy that occur during periods of low flow in this river. Also, we found increased GPP in the regulated river during periods of high flow, and this respiration was higher in the disturbed rivers compared with the Sendales. Yeah, and our next step is continue with measurements to identify seasonal patterns. We complete 2 years of data this summer. And the next step is also to relate GPP and ER to environmental variables to find those drivers that are influencing metabolism, and also to compare with other tropical rivers and temperate rivers. So Krista.
Thanks, Mercedes. So I realized that Mercedes is only showing data from 3 rivers, but I just want to highlight that they are really big rivers relative to what other people have studied. And it takes sometimes over a full day to get to one of those sites to get that. And we, and this is super royal, like this was not me. The team had to get a burro to haul the thing out, the sensors out when they were buried. So these data are impossible to get unless people are really invested and on the ground. So what I will say is that if you find yourself, you're someone like me who wants to be working in places that are very far, wherever that is, and you want to be asking these types of continuous questions in highly dynamic systems, even if you don't want to, collaborations are imperative. And the thing that I think has been so great is that, the data we're getting are just completely unique because people aren't studying these types of systems. And I am blessed that Mercedes likes working with me because I often reflect what I actually bring to the research team. So that's what I will say. But all of these things, this complementary expertise, the ability to analyze connections and being able to get out into the field and have continuous access to sites, and then helping with permits and processing, especially in what I would consider the last few years for both of our countries has been really politically tense. And so that has been imperative to get anything done, but wonderful in the fact that we could continue. And Mercedes, can you go to the next one? And this is especially true because that grant that I received from the National Science Foundation, that grant is 100% to work in Mexico, and I received it January 2020. And unlike, can you go to the next slide, Mercedes? I started reading papers like this coming out where people were like, oh, my career is over. I can't get any of my work done because, I was doing all this international work. And I'm like, well, then y'all are doing it wrong. Because yes, we had to slow down. Mercedes, I think you can go to the next slide. you know, we had to slow down. It had to be waited. We had to wait until it was relatively safe in Mexico and everyone felt safe to go and do what they were going to do. But we were able to continue our work and our collaboration and our thinking and our writing during all of this and through the COVID pandemic. And so what I will say is I think COVID was the first time something like this happens, not the last time. And so again, there's the joy and wonder that I get from this collaboration. And I'm not going to say Mercedes gets the same joy because yeah, I'm difficult to deal with, but there's also just being pragmatic. So, I think if folks want to do this type of work and you want to do it in a sustainable way for yourself and for your colleagues, thinking about this is great because we slowed down, but we didn't stop. And I will say in very large part, that was to Mercedes and her amazing work ethic and my budget. And you can say what you want about that, but
yeah, I support that. I mean, thank you, Krista. But yes, I think that we were here trying to go to the field. We weren't sure if we should go or not. But we got the grant it was September 2020. Then Villahermosa got flooded. So we have a lot of issues in addition to COVID. And I think having this collaboration, sometimes when I have doubts how to do that, we talk and Krista say, well, why you don't try this? Can I help you? And really helps. I mean, it is the support and the budget also. Sometimes we cannot hire or we have limitations for some items, and that's where the resilience comes. I mean, that's where this international collaboration really helps to keep the project going. And also, I mean, these have been 2 years. The minimally disturbed river is far away, and everything works fine. I mean, sometimes we cannot go because COVID, the hotel was closed, or the river is so high that the boat drivers say, from Chiapas, from the Lacantun, I mean, they call us or they WhatsApp us and say, don't come, the rivers are very high. But I mean, the disturbed rivers, they are closer, but they are more difficult to work. I mean, when they got flooded, sometimes the sensor got trapped in the bottom. And we also have this very, amazing local people that are all the time connecting with us. I mean, in this project, we also have like a social component, and we have some colleagues that are working with the people, in the areas where we have the sensors, and they are really, they help us. Telling us about the river, telling us about how we are doing, how the sensors are, and it really helps. It really helps to have somebody in the field helping us, and we also are connecting with them to see how the project can help us or provide more knowledge about the system today, or how their knowledge complement our knowledge of the river. So, well, this is one of the crocodiles. Thank you. This is in the Sendales.
It's like one of the prettiest rivers ever. Actually, I think it's behind me too. You can see it. So I don't know if we have any wisdom to impart, but we're happy to answer questions if folks do. Y si tiene preguntas en español está bien también.
All right. Well, thanks so much. That was really great. That was more than I was expecting and could have asked for. So that was so much to chew on and think about. I always have plenty of questions, but I'll go ahead and open this up to anyone else who wants to step forward. I mean, they did a really great job sort of, providing info on sort of the ins and outs of how to, create these partnerships and make them sustainable for a long time, benefit everybody involved and all the local people. So, I mean, that's I was really glad that you linked to that article, Krista. That's something that's at the top of everybody's mind, or should be, that's thinking about doing this for sure. I think that should come number one. Does anybody have any questions?
No questions.
No questions. Thank you.
No questions? Okay. Well, I always have questions. So I'll start with an easy one. So I was going to ask, like how you would recommend sort of finding these collaborators, but I know how Krista does it because she's like the best networker that I know. But I was just interested personally, how did you two meet up, first of all?
We met on a street in San Cristobal de las Casas at around 8 p.m. No, I actually think we met at a NABS, at a
Okay.
Yeah, we
SFS
met
meeting.
in a NAPS.
And we are actually academically related. So Mercedes' advisor was my advisor's advisor.
Okay.
But then the next time we met was on the street in San Cristobal. Years later, randomly, we were just walking. And then I was actually working in Mexico, I think, longer than Mercedes had been. And then she moved to Mexico, and then I attached myself to her like a leech.
That's great. And it seems like, I mean, obviously you guys have an awesome relationship that makes everything a lot easier. I also had a question on sort of how do you sort of I don't know the right terminology. How do you sort of recruit or find or such great local field help? Like how do you go about, doing, is it all personal connections as well, or do you put out ads, or how do you do that? Yeah.
My personal opinion is that, well, I had to learn how to say the word platypus in Spanish, which I did not know.
Okay, please tell me that.
Ornitorrinco.
Okay.
Ornitorrinco, but it's because all of our field people are not just field people. They can do analytical chemistry, they can drive. They're really awesome to work with men, women, local people in the field. They're all fabulous.
Yeah.
So I have why Mercedes? Why do they exist? They're just the best people ever.
Yeah, I think we have been lucky. I mean, we have had we have many technicians, and we usually, once that you say, okay, I want to hire this person again, and once you get the project, you contact them and say, well, or I submitted this project, do you think that you will be available in 1 year or sometime? So we start exploring the possibility to working with people that we know that is good in the field, good in the lab. And with the local people, I think it's usually luck. I mean, all the boat drivers and the people that is helping us in the field, they are very good also. They are very
I've usually
bold,
found fishermen are pretty fun to work with.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's people usually taking pictures of the sensors, sending the pictures, telling us how the river is. And so we are doing this with our colleagues on the social component part. We have these WhatsApp groups with the communities. So if they have questions about the river, we would tell them, and they ask, something particular, that maybe information about discharge or information about how the river have, behave or have some, more like biophysical stuff about the river, they ask us. But also they know a lot about these systems. They know when the fish come, when the shrimp migrate, all this information, about the system. So I have been very lucky, blessed to have all this help in the field, and the collaboration with Krista have been great.
That's great. I mean, that local knowledge is so crucial, right? Because so it seemed like, I don't know, we're using hobos or something. So you're not you are continuously monitoring, but can you see the data in real time, or? Yeah, so I mean, like without people on the ground, I mean, they probably saved so much lost equipment and stuff as well, just being there and taking care of it. That's so great. Okay, well, please feel free. So after this,
Yeah, I have a question. Are you wrapping up, Clay? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Puni.
Sorry, I missed the beginning part of the talk, so I might have missed this, why this is, but I was very curious on the GPP respiration data you guys were showing. Really cool. And it seems like some sites or some rivers, it's uncoupled. So is that, so I don't know if you can go back to that figure. If it's, you know, do you guys know what's causing that imbalance? Or maybe I'm even reading it wrong, but you were saying, yeah, so there's times where it's strongly uncoupled and times where it's not. And it depends on the river, of course. So do we know what's going on, what's causing those?
You're muted, Mercedes.
I can't hear, sorry.
Mercedes, you're muted.
Okay. Now,
There you go.
okay.
You're good.
For the minimally disturbed river, the Sendales, we think that discharge is a very important factor. I mean, in this river, even with the very high discharge, oxygen goes down. I mean, if discharge go up, oxygen goes down slightly.
I'm not used to thinking that. I'm used to lakes.
So it's like for a minimally disturbed.
Goes up, this oxygen goes up. So is there a way to correct for that effect? Or is
that's the modeling about. I mean, the modeling will go to try to see, well, is this for it's just a matter of this of dilution, or is a problem with inputs of groundwater? So we know that conductivity goes down too. So it's not like groundwater with low oxygen entering the river and decreasing the dissolved oxygen. In this case, I mean, for that, this model will not work. We need to apply another model. But in this case, conductivity goes down when the river goes up. So it means that it's mostly surface water. So for the Sendales, we think, I mean, that the discharge is an important factor. And likely water transparency is another factor that could be influencing this. And for the Sendales, when you see the discharge going up even a little bit, dissolved oxygen goes down. It's like, and a few hours or days later, the system recovers pretty fast.
I was assuming it was biologically driven, but thanks for explaining that it's more.
Yeah, I think that during the rainy season it's discharge, but also discharge bringing organic matter from the terrestrial system. And when the discharge brings when the precipitation brings more organic matter, respiration will go up. So it's a factor, but it's biological driven. But maybe the driver, is the discharge or the rainfall.
It's cool, very cool.
But for the disturbed rivers, as you say, it's much more
decoupled,
uncoupled. Here will be more challenging to see what's going on.
And Puni, this isn't the Sendales, this is the Lacandon behind me, but this is what the Sendales looks like when it's clear. I mean, it is like crystal, but as soon as discharge starts coming up, clarity plummets, but it only plummets because it's this clear to start out with, right? So you do see that response, but then these rivers will go up, meters in depth over a 24-hour period. So it will be massive volumes of water will come in. So I think one night it went over 4 meters up or something like that, right, Mercedes? So like
especially de la Sierra.
Yeah.
De la Sierra, because the Carrizal, this is regulated. So
regulated now.
It goes up 1 meter because it's raining a lot and they release water from the hydroelectric dam. but the de la Sierra can go up in hours 4 meters. Okay, and our data loggers are in the bottom of the river. So we just pray that they will stay there. We use a special, how to say, like lines,
Burro.
like what,
A burro.
yeah, and the burro, yeah, to try to move the boat sometimes to try to move them from when they got like really covered by mud but the de la Sierra, I will say that is the more challenging. I mean, it's the most challenging river because the floods and the mud, it has a large amount of suspended sediments.
Thank you. You're muted, Clay.
Thanks, Puni. So Mercedes has Krista and I have Puni to keep me on track. Thanks so much. I want to be conscious of your time. I have plenty more questions. I think I'm really looking forward to posting this and seeing the sort of feedback that we get. I think it's yeah, invaluable advice, and I really appreciate it. And if you ever need any geochemical help, you have Ophelia here. You just reach out. I can put you in touch. She's sort of my mentor in that area, so she's good. And yeah, hopefully we can catch up sometime in person, a meeting or something. It'd be really nice to see you all. Okay, well, thanks so much. I think this was our second highest attendance ever. So I think we reached at least 20 people, and that's not even counting the awesome room full of students that we have. So I'm very happy and very thankful for everybody showing up and for our two presenters. So yeah, I'll send out an email about our next meeting. It will be also we're going to go down to South America and look at some Argentina glacier inputs into aquatic systems. So I'm an ecologist and I'm finding all of these ecology talks. I'd be more than happy if anybody knows a geochemist that wants to come on and talk more about stuff. So that would be great. But
and just can I have one more plug?
Yeah,
Mercedes
for sure.
and I are always looking for really smart graduate students. So if anyone is interested in applying for graduate programs, you can get both of us on your PhD committee. So look at our website.
That would be a dream team. I tried to work with Krista once, but that didn't happen. But we still pulled some stuff off, and hopefully we can again in the future. So if you want, Krista, I can include that on the next email. I'll put your email addresses and websites and stuff.
That would be great. I have an ad I can send out in English and Spanish.
Perfect. That would be awesome. Yeah, if you do that, I'll definitely send it out to the whole network. Or honestly, you can just reply all and do a little follow. But yeah, however it helps. That's why we're here, trying to build networks and stuff. So we really appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thanks for showing up.
I am so